I need you to be honest with me because even now, I'm not sure I did the right thing. I walked into an airport half asleep, said yes when a stranger called me by the wrong name, and 10 minutes later I was buckled into a private jet headed to Paris with a man who could buy my entire city and not notice the charge. If it were you, would you have screamed to get off? Or would you have sat there pretending you belonged for just one breath of quiet? Yeah, that happened. Before I dive in, do me a favor and drop your city in the comments. I want to see where you're watching from because this story traveled a lot farther than Atlantic City. I'm Elena, 26, ICU nurse professional handholder for families who are breaking, and semi-professional coffee addict. The night this started, I came off a 12-hour shift at Memorial Hospital that was actually more like 13, ran a shower that lasted the length of one chorus on the radio, threw my backpack on and told myself I was going to take my first vacation in 3 years. 2 days in Atlantic City with my friend Megan. Cheap hotel, cheap laughs, cheaper slot machines. The kind of trip where you're allowed to be nobody for 48 hours. I was late. I was wired and exhausted at the same time, and the only phrase in my brain was Gate 23, don't miss Gate 23B. You know that level of tired where the letters blur, where the difference between a gate sign and a door looks like a trick of the light. That's where I was. I turned a corner and saw a little cluster of very calm, very pressed people standing at a door with a gold handle, and a woman with a perfect bun smiled at me like she'd been waiting. Miss Jenkins, we've been expecting you. My mouth said, before my brain could return from the afterlife. She took my backpack like it belonged to her, another person said. Mr. Carter is already on board and my shoes carried me down a quiet hallway that smelled like expensive soap. If you're yelling at your screen right now, I get it. A normal person would have stopped. But I wasn't normal. I was that flavor of exhausted where compliance feels like mercy. We stepped into a jet. Not a plane. A jet. Cream leather, dark wood, soft lights, the air felt cushioned. Oh no, I heard myself whisper, which is about as effective as whispering at a tidal wave. The door closed with that pressurized whoosh, and there he was sitting with his back to me, looking out the oval window like he owned the sky. He turned. He looked at me. He said very calmly, "You're not Vanessa." I swallowed. "No, I'm not. I'm Elena. And I think I just boarded the wrong life." He smiled. Small real. It would seem so. Then the jet rolled. I grabbed the armrest and blurted something like, "I have to get off. I have a flight. I have a friend. I have a brother. I have a job. I'm not legally allowed to be this close to wood paneling." And he said too gently, for a kidnapper, "I'm afraid we're already cleared for takeoff." We lifted. The city fell away. My stomach stayed on the ground. He handed me water. "I'm Damien," he said. "Damien Carter. And if you're thinking, oh my God, the Damien Carter I need you to understand. I did not know who that was. Not then. That matters. I'm Elena," I said, clutching the bottle like a life raft. "I'm an ICU nurse. I'm a nobody who makes sure other people stay somebodies. I can't be here. I have to be back by Monday night for my shift. I have my brother Tommy. He's 18, but still, I'm his person. I can't do Paris." I caught myself. "Is this going to Paris?" He nodded once. "Paris." I laughed, the kind that comes out like a sob. "Paris, Paris." "Great. Breathe," he said, and I hated that it worked. "Once we land, I'll put you on the first flight home. This isn't your fault. I'll fix it. Until then, eat or you're going to pass out." When was the last time someone told you to sit, not because you were a problem, but because you were tired? He asked what I do. I said ICU, and his whole face changed, like that meant something beyond scrubs and sore feet. I felt my mouth open, and the rest of my life fell out. 2 years since our parents died in that crash, me stepping into the adult role mid-sentence, Tommy finishing high school, while I tried to keep the lights on, extra shifts, sleepless nights, the guilt of even considering leaving town for one weekend. He listened the way people listen when they aren't trying to fix you. Just hold you long enough for you to remember you can fix yourself. I understand responsibility, he said, voice low. More than most. Somewhere over the ocean, under a blanket I didn't own, to the humming sound of engines that cost more than my building, I slept. 6 hours of sleep like a blessing. When I woke, the window was full of pink and gold clouds, and my first thought was, oh God, it wasn't a dream. He was there, laptop closed, the kind of present that feels like attention, not surveillance. We land in an hour, he said. Call whoever you need. We'll get you home. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. We landed. No lines. No fluorescent lights. A car was waiting on the tarmac like we were in a movie with a soundtrack. We can send you straight to the airport for a return, he said, and this is only if you want. You can sleep, shower, eat something that isn't packaged in plastic, and I'll fly you out tomorrow. Separate rooms. Your call. Here's the dangerous thing about being the responsible one. When someone you barely know says you can rest your bones, say yes before your brain can lecture them. I said yes, just one night. Paris at night is a painting, and that car floated through it like a brushstroke. The hotel wasn't loud wealth. It was quiet authority marble that didn't brag. Everyone knew him. Everyone said bonsoir, Mr. Carter, like he lived inside a password. He asked for a second room on my floor, made sure I had a balcony facing the tower, told me breakfast at 9 on the roof. The view helps, and then he told me to sleep again, like he understood my insomnia better than I did. I slept 10 hours. I woke up forgetting where I was, then remembering, then panicking quietly because reality has a way of showing up in the daylight. That's when my phone exploded. Tommy had called, Megan had called, my aunt had texted, "Are you in France or is my neighbor's daughter lying to me again?" And then Tommy sent the message that flipped the table. "You're with Damien Carter, right?" "Elena. He's a billionaire. I just Googled him. 4 billion. I typed his name, and the internet handed me a resume with a crown. Pictures with politicians and entertainers, tech awards, headlines about his security software, changing entire industries, think pieces about how he dropped out of the public eye after his best friend and business partner died in a climbing accident. I sat there in a hotel robe with my hair doing whatever it wanted and thought, you let me talk like we were equals and you knew I didn't know. I found him in the lobby reading something and still noticing me the second I stepped out of the elevator. So I said very calm, the way calm gets when anger holds the leash, "Billionaire, huh?" His face didn't go smug. It went vulnerable. "I was going to tell you tonight," he said. "I just wanted one day where I was. Me. Not a number." "Do you think that's fair?" I asked. And I wasn't just asking him. I was asking the world. To let me be honest without having all the information. "You're right," he said, hands open like surrender. "I'm sorry." Then he told me about Mark. Best friend since college. The kind of partner who makes your good ideas great and your bad days tolerable. The fall, the funeral, the office that turned into a museum of ghosts. People treating him like glass or a checkbook. Nothing in between. Dates that felt like interviews. Noise where there should have been quiet. Yesterday, he said, and his voice found the floor again, I felt like a person for the first time in a year. You didn't know who I was. You didn't care. You were tired and honest and real. I wanted to keep my anger like a shield. It slid off. Not because money is a pass, but because grief is a language I speak. I said, "You should have told me." He said, "You're right again. You can smell a fake apology." This wasn't that. So we went out. Not tourists. People. Tiny cafe where the owner kissed him on both cheeks and brought me an espresso strong enough to restart a heart. A little garden behind an old church where cherry blossoms fell like sugar, and we sat on a stone bench saying nothing for a whole minute, because sometimes silence is the first honest thing. He told me he still blames himself for not going on that climb. I told him I still replay the night my parents died like my absence could have changed physics. He said I've been running. I said I've been holding everything up. He laughed a sad little laugh and said I was strong. I told him I wasn't, just stubborn. Dinner was in a place with 6 tables and a candle pushed into an empty bottle. We ate whatever the chef decided, and it tasted like a person made it on purpose. He watched me talk about my patients, the ones we saved, the ones we didn't, and said, "You're remarkable, Elena." I said, "No, I'm just doing my job." He shook his head. That's exactly why. He walked me to my door at the hotel, stopped at a respectful distance, kissed my cheek, and said, "Good night." No performance. Just warmth. The kind that makes your own life soften around the edges. I was supposed to fly home the next evening, go back to the ICU, put the memory in a frame, and hang it on the wall inside my chest. He ruined that plan in the most sincere way possible. We were in Montmartre at Sunset City, lights blinking on like stars, learning their lines, and he said, "What if you didn't get on your flight? What if you stayed 2 more days? I have a place outside the city. It's quiet. No noise, no cameras. We can breathe and see what this is." He didn't say stay forever. He didn't say be mine. He said breathe. My first reflex was no. The second was call Tommy. My brother answered on the first ring, listened to my whole trembling explanation, and said something I'll never forget. "Stay. You've carried me for 2 years. Let me carry myself for 2 days. Go be happy. If you're a caregiver, you know how hard permission can hit." We drove to the countryside that night. A stone house with ivy, a kitchen that felt used, a library with floor-to-ceiling books, a view of green that healed something I didn't know was bleeding. The village market the next morning knew him as Damien, the American. Not the credit score, not the net worth. We bought bread and cheese and a jar of honey from a farmer who argued kindly about which batch was best for spring. We had a picnic by a river under hanging willows' feet, in the cold water sun, through the leaves, like tiny spotlights. He told me Mark's mom taught him to cook, so he wouldn't be useless just because he knew code. I told him my dad used to take us camping every summer, and how I missed the sound of night when it isn't made of alarms. Somewhere in there. The kitchen, the river, or the library, with the fire crackling like it had its own secrets. I realized I was falling. Not for the jet, not for the hotel, for the quiet of his attention, for the way he asked about my tired, and didn't flinch at the answer, for the way grief recognized grief, and chose gentleness anyway. He said, "I know this is fast. I don't want this to be a story I used to tell. I want to try." I told him I was scared of becoming a novelty. The nurse from Jersey in the Billionaire chapter that ends when the novelty does. He cupped my face like it was breakable and said, "You're not novelty. You're air." I hadn't been breathing. We kissed. It wasn't flashy. It was relief. We slept in separate rooms that night, not because the desire wasn't there, but because it was, and it deserved patience. The next day, I flew home. Because the rent won't pay itself, because patients keep getting sick, because life keeps moving even when your heart wants to stay still. He put me in a first-class seat that reclined like a spell, told me to call him the second my wheels hit the ground, and when I did, he answered on the first ring like he'd been standing under a storm waiting for thunder. Here's the part that surprised me more than the jet. Thursday night, he came to my apartment. Not a hotel. My apartment with the thrifted couch and the shoes by the door and the stack of bills that make their own little leaning tower. He brought wildflowers that looked like the ones near the river. He shook Tommy's hand like he knew Tommy might say no and he was prepared to take it. We went to the tiny Italian place on my block where the owner knows my name and brings bread without asking, and Damien looked around like he'd been starved for a place exactly like that. When I joked, "So what, Rome next?" "Tokyo a yacht," he smiled, shook his head and said, "Actually, I was hoping you'd take me somewhere. The state park your dad loved. A cabin. A lake. Your world." If you want to know when I believed him, it was then. When the man with a house in Malibu wanted a weekend in a cabin that rents by the night and comes with mosquitoes. Now here's where I need you. People talk about money like it destroys love by default, either because someone with it uses someone without it, or someone without it is using someone with it. We've all seen it. We've all judged it. Caregivers like me get told to be strong until we shatter, then shamed for wanting softness when it finally shows up. So tell me, can two people from different worlds build something equal when the systems around them are not? Is love enough if the power around it is uneven? Or is the work the point? Two people working on making it equal, choosing truth over performance, consent over pressure, patience over hunger. I'm not ending this with a proposal or a promise engraved on silver. I'm ending it with what he said at the airport in Paris, forehead to mine, right before I walked toward security and away from the 3 strangest, gentlest days of my life. "This isn't goodbye," he said. "It's see you soon." And we both meant it. So what would you have done? Would you have stayed those 2 days or gotten on that plane, clocked in on time, and called it a story you almost had? Do you think he was wrong not to tell me who he was on day 1, even if what he wanted was a day as a person, not as a net worth? And bigger than us, do you think a nurse and a billionaire can meet in the middle without the money turning every good thing into a transaction? Drop your take in the comments. Agree, disagree. Tell me your own wild meet cute, or the moment a stranger handed you the rest you didn't know how to ask for. If this hit you somewhere deep, share it with someone who carries too much. And if you want to see how the cabin trip goes, well, hit subscribe because that chapter is getting written either way, and I want you there when we find out if the wrong plane actually took me exactly where I was supposed to go.